Hi, it's Robin. I got my Commodore PET here and a little game I wrote. Let's run it. It's called 10 Print RACER, and you just have to guide that asterisk through this. We don't guide it through the maze, you guide it through the the road, the gap. And as you go further, the road narrows. So I actually started this almost 2 years ago. I was hanging out with Ben Heck at the Midwest Gaming Classic in April 2018, and he started coding the very beginnings of this game, but anyway, he gave up after a little bit. He had it making the road, but there was nothing driving on it or whatever yet. So I thought I'd keep it, I'd continue it on, and I worked on it then, and then about 6 months later I picked it up again while I was at the Vintage Computer Festival in Chicago. And then it just sort of sat around, and I thought, well, it gets really narrow here. Crash. 669, that's a pretty good score. So with us in isolation because of the virus, I've had lots of time to work on things down here, but not as much time to record because my whole family's home all the time, and it's never quiet enough for me to record. So I'm up at about 3 a.m. doing this now. So this game's available for download. You can just go check the description and grab it. It should run on any Commodore PET emulator, and it should also run on the C64 with just a few tweaks. And so today we're going to look through this program. So my goal with this was to fit it all on one screen, and I've now achieved better than that. I think I have 3 or 4 lines to spare. So let's just walk through it. Now, I've mainly optimized for speed because this game is written in BASIC, but as you saw it, the full screen scrolls, mostly due to use of the print command and a number of optimizations. Let's just go through it here. This line 5 only runs at the beginning. And the reason I call this 10 Print RACER is because it has that famous little line, you might know it here, print we run that, and there's that 10 print maze that I show every opportunity I get. So I thought it would be neat, instead of just a boring background like some other similar tunnel games, I thought it'd be fun to have this maze be the border that you are driving through. So let's delete that little line. I threw that at the beginning there. Okay, so again, we'll look here. So first we just initialize a string variable to nothing. That's actually not necessary, but in case we want to randomly generate the maze border every time, then we actually do need to initialize that. So I left that in. I ended up not running that every time just because it took a little longer between games, and I like quick replays. Okay, and then we just clear the screen and print initialization, just the little message that we're initting, and then we're going to, 75 times, we're going to generate a random character, either 205 or 206, and that's the 2 slashes here that can be obtained from Shift N and M. So because we're doing random 205 and a half, 0.5, and then adding a random number between 0 and 1, non-inclusive, where this dot is just a speed optimization. It gets interpreted by BASIC as a 0, and that's just a parameter for the random function. So it returns a number between 0 and 1, and then it automatically gets truncated to an integer. So 50% of the time it'll fall on 205, and 50% of the time it'll be character 206. So we're storing that in M string, and then we're building up this R string, which is, well, I don't even know why I called it R string, I guess road or something, even though it's not the road, it's the shoulder. And we're building up that string, 75 characters long of random maze. And then we just print that character just for something to look at while the player's waiting. Actually, it doesn't take very long at all. Let's run that so you can see it generate that maze. There we go. I stopped it before it clears the screen again right after. So it's just generating 75 characters like this. So we're cheating here by pre-rendering a piece of the maze. I found that actually randomly generating it, that's hundreds and hundreds of extra characters. Basically, randomly generating all those characters just took way too much CPU time. So instead we render it as a long string, and then we will do substrings of it after. Once the initialization is done, we clear the screen, and we're going to set the car, that's the asterisk, it's not really a car at all, but anyway, the car to X position 20, which is roughly the middle of the screen. Either 19 or 20 are the two middle characters on this 40 column screen. And we're going to say that the road starts at position 13, that is position 0 through 12 are going to be the left shoulder, and then the road is at character 13, that's in the middle. And its width is 15 characters, so the width of the blank area in the middle, 15 characters. The distance we've traveled is currently 0, that's essentially your score. Screen memory is at 32768. Oh yeah, the pet chirps when you go past column 35. So screen memory is at 32768. That's fixed. That's a 1000 character or 1000 byte screen matrix. Starting up in the top corner, location 32768, 32769, and so on. And it wraps around. On the Commodore 64, that's at location 1024, or 400 hex. So you could change this number right here to 1024 if you wanted to get this working on the Commodore 64. And we're also initializing L to 0 for the level. Now note that I'm not trying to write this in the minimum number of basic lines, minimum number of screen lines, so that fits on one screen. As I said, I've actually far exceeded that. I don't know, I just decided I wanted to see it all on the screen at once. So L for 0, this is a counter for how far we're going into the level. And a level is just going to be every 50 lines that the player manages to scroll through, then we're going to make the road one character narrower. So the further you go in, it'll shrink, and we're using this as a counter. Now this is a real hack here, but this is for Z equals 0 to 1, step 0. This is an infinite loop. This is our main game loop. Now of course we could just use a goto, but a goto is both a little bit slower than a for next loop. Oh, I just noticed a bug. I just had this optimization earlier. Really, down here, it should not be then go to 20, it should be then next. Previously, I had been using gotos, but changed it to this infinite for loop for the two advantages of it. One, it's a bit faster than a goto, and number two, it allows us to loop and still make use of a bit of instruction space before the for loop. If we were doing a goto, it would execute that L equals 0 every time. We don't want that. And I was just basically out of space earlier here to stick that in. So that was the double advantage. So we're inside the main game loop now. And we're going to choose X as just a random number from 0 through 9. And then if X is less than 4, that is if it's 0, 1, 2, or 3, actually it's a float, so roughly 40% of the time, then we're going to move the road left one character. And then we make sure that the road does not go all the way to column 0. If it goes less than row 1, then we put it back to row 1. That's just so that there's always at least a bit of shoulder on the road. And then likewise, if X is greater than 5, then we're going to move the road to the right. And maybe this is a bug here. Before I was thinking that these were just ints, but since it's a float, currently it goes left if x is from 0 to 3.999, but if x is greater than 5, then that could be 5.01, so that would be all of 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So actually there's almost a 50% chance. So I should make that if x is greater than 6, then the road is going to go to the right. I guess I could do if x is greater than or equal to 6, but that would be a little bit slower to parse and would only account for that tiny fraction of when it's exactly 6.00. So anyway, greater than is totally good enough. I was noticing that the road was tending to the right a little and didn't think that through. I'm so glad I'm explaining this to you guys. You guys are my rubber duck. If x is greater than 6, then move the road to the right. And then if the road width is greater than 37, that is, it's column 38. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm not using all 40 columns of the road. I'm just keeping the gameplay on 39 and leaving a blank character at the right. The reason for that is if we print right down the bottom right corner, it causes the screen to scroll double sometimes. It just looks ugly. So we're just leaving that right column blank. That could be overcome with some extra pokes, but at the cost of speed, so I didn't bother. So if the road position plus the width is greater than 37, then we limit the road so it cannot go off screen. And we're having to add the road position on the left side plus the width, and that's how we're limiting so there's always at least one character of shoulder here. And then we're going to choose a random number. Well, I called it RN. I probably should call that something else for speed's sake. Using a variable name with 2 letters is a bit slower. But RN is for random. And it was just so I could keep it straight, because I already have R string and R. Okay, so again, choosing a random number from 0 to 34 and adding 1, so it's from 1 to 35. And this is just for the sake of this string. We're going to print mid-string. That takes a substring from our string, which is our randomly generated maze. And we're going to do it at position RN. That's from 1 to 35. That's just so there's some variety as we randomly choose a substring out of that pre-generated random string. This print mid-string is much faster than individually printing a whole bunch of characters. So that's why we're doing it this way. And then we want to print road worth. That's the size of the left-hand shoulder, R. So that prints out the left side of the screen. Then SPCW, it prints W, the width of our road, blank spaces. So that's the middle of the road. And then mid-string, R string, and this is just the same as printing the left shoulder, but the number of characters we want is 39 minus the road width minus the left shoulder. So in total, we have printed 39 characters in that one line. Line 60. Now that we've printed one more line of the road, we're going to increase our distance by 1. So that's essentially like we've driven 1 unit. And we're also keeping track of L. That's so that we know how far we've driven in this level so we can narrow the road. And here we go. If L is greater than 49, then set it back to 0 again and decrement the width. If the width is less than 3, then the width equals 3. So that means we're starting off at a road width of 15 and narrowing it down all the way to 3 and then not thinner. I actually had that 2 at one point, but that was just impossible. Oh yeah, and here's that bug fix we did. So if the distance is less than 25, then next. So for the first 25 characters, let's just run that again. You actually can't drive while it generates the beginning of the road. Here we go. You see how that? There, now the asterisk appears. I'll run that one more time. There, so that when the initial screen is drawn, we actually are preventing control of the car. We're just going to print the first 25 lines. And that's what that line does, and that's why I had fixed. Okay, now we're going to get a string, and that's the character. Just if there's a key in the keyboard buffer, we're going to store that in a string. And if that is equal to 4, on pet games it's pretty standard to use the number pad as sort of a D pad. So 4 is the left direction. And if that's pressed, then we're going to move the car left. And if the key pressed was 6, then we're going to move the car to the right. And now we don't have to do any boundary checking for the car because the collision system will take care of that. And we're looking at that next. That is, you can't drive left off the screen because we've ensured that there's always a shoulder there. Okay, now we're going to peek screen memory plus the car. So that's wherever the car is, like it might be up here. So wherever the car is, we're going to be peeking that line to see what's there. We haven't actually drawn the car there yet. So we're getting whatever character's in screen memory at that location. If it's not equal to 32, that's a space, then we've crashed and we're going to jump ahead. We're going to go to 200. By the way, the keyword go to is assumed if it sees a line number. So if there is not a blank space for the car to move into, then we have crashed. And otherwise, we're going to poke S plus C. So that's the new location of the car, and we're going to poke the asterisk 42. You could change that 42 to any other character if you want the car to be something other than an asterisk. And then we're done the game loop if there hasn't been an accident next. And that goes all the way back up to line 20 here. And otherwise, it's just the game over sequence. We're going to print 17 blank spaces and then the word crash. And if the distance traveled is greater than h, that's our high score variable, then the high score equals the distance. Okay, so that way we're keeping track of a high score, just with one line of logic there. And then we're going to print out, print, that comma is a tab, so it's going to jump ahead to the next tab, which is 10 characters over. I'm going to print the word score, and the variable, the distance that we just did, and then the high score, we're going to print h. Now you actually don't need semicolons in some cases here. Normally you would have a semicolon to append the variables, but that's just not required in certain cases. Okay, then we're going to just do a delay loop from x equals 1 to 2000 next, and that's just waiting roughly 2 seconds delay after high score. And then here we're going to poke 158,0. What that does is empties the keyboard buffer. So if the player was furiously trying to move left or right just before they crashed, then they may have entered extra keys in. And a lot of games have this fault that you might be playing, you're hitting the button, you're moving the joystick or keyboard or whatever, you die, and the game does not wait, and it just immediately starts a new game. And that's a really annoying thing, isn't it? I've even seen some games just recently that did that. So instead, what we do is we clear the keyboard buffer by putting a 0 in it. That's kind of, the operating system is storing the keys that are pressed and putting them in this buffer. That's, I believe, 10 characters long. But by poking 158,0, you're telling the computer there is no key in the keyboard buffer. And then, once the 2-second delay loop is over and you get the A string, then it will still be blank. We'll just do an endless loop until a key is freshly pressed. Otherwise, whatever key you press during this 2-second delay has been buffered, and it would immediately start a new game, and that's annoying. Okay, and on the Commodore 64 or VIC-20, this is poke 198, 198, 0. So if you're adapting this for the Commodore 64, you can do that there. Okay, and finally, key is pressed. We're going to go to 10. That's back at the beginning of the game where it all gets initialized again. You could go to 5 if you wanted it to generate a new random maze for the shoulders. But again, like I was saying, that has a bit of a delay. but it's set up for you to do that. All right. So that's the game. Like I said, check it out. You can download it below, and if you want to make improvements to it or tweak it, it's set up to be pretty tweakable, even though it's optimized. You could ignore that one screen restriction and add whatever you like to the game. All right, well, thank you to my patrons who support this channel. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, so you can either see your name on the screen or check out some of the additional content I create for my patrons, then check out that link in the description below. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope everyone's keeping safe. And I've been working all kinds of pre-production for episodes, so to speak. Figuring stuff out. Oh, come on. Been figuring all kinds of stuff out, but I'm just having trouble getting the episodes recorded. So I'm going to try and solve that so I can get back in the regular flow of getting an episode out regularly. All right, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. You don't shed, and you don't scratch.